Well, welcome back to Two Veterans and One Cup. Today I have my good friend Wednesday with me, and we're going to be discussing the First Amendment and the idea behind it. Uh, Introduce yourself.
Um, I picked a fucking name. I finally settled on one. I'm
Oh,
Shoshana. I was a chemical specialist in the Army. Um, yeah, now I only use Wednesday as my porn name, so that's pretty cool.
oh, okay.
Because everyone will still call me that, and I'm like, dude, like that's just for the OnlyFans. Like, fuck
Oh,
out of here.
dang,
Um,
I'm.
but yeah,
That's
so
awkward now.
oh, you're fine. Yeah, right.
No, no.
So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Um, but yeah, glad that you seemed excited to talk about this one. I think it's one that's become a drastically important issue since people are getting prison time in some countries right now for saying dumb things.
That's
Uh,
fair.
yeah, I I find it really sad that we think we were talking touching on it just a little bit, but the idea of the Bill of Rights, the ideas behind the enumerated rights, I don't think a lot of people really understand them anymore, where they came from and the importance behind them. Um, Not that I hold any of the founding fathers in any kind of like god level of esteem or anything like that, but I got to say that the basic ideas were really well thought out, and the guys were put a lot of effort into it, so to speak, and that the as we are today, there's quite a few people that seem to not understand those ideas or not attempting to understand those ideas so much anymore and where they came from.
I agree. I view it from the standpoint of the overturn of Roe v. Wade for enumerated rights, and everyone's just like, hell yeah, we pro-life, and it's like, do you know what else is an enumerated right? Interracial marriage. An enumerated right is marriage equality for the gay community. So it's like you can applaud yourself for repealing this right that we had. But remember, you are applauding losing a right. So if we get rid of this one, we now have a legal precedent that's set that with enough thought behind it, we can just take your rights away.
Well, and uh, see, that's to me kind of at the core of it. And I was talking with our Don, our mutual friend Don, about it in a previous episode where the principal idea was of the Constitution and our Bill of Rights and those things were evolved out of common law, uh, which evolved over hundreds and hundreds of years. But the culmination of it was you have all of your rights all the time. And the idea being that there was no need whatsoever for enumerated rights because you simply have all your rights all the time. And the civic, you know, courts and the criminal courts, the purpose of them was to see where the problem was between two people having all of their rights all the time. So if you've committed murder, for instance, well, you just took all of that person's rights away. So that's bad on you. Uh, so I find it, well, the one thing is, I found it very sad that Roe versus Wade needed to be a thing to begin with. There needed not there should not have been a judgment needed for anyone to exercise their rights. And yet at the same time, when it was overturned, that's also a sad thing, but at the same time it's like, well, no, it's sad, but at the same time, that's not something that needed to be enumerated to begin with. So that's my stance on that. It should have just been a right to begin with. There shouldn't have had to have been a judgment passed, if that makes any sense.
It definitely does. I just realized that people have been talking in my stream chat, and they're getting fired.
They're getting
I don't think
fired.
actually, but because of what we're talking about, I guess he has it on Audible. So
Oh boy.
if he keeps right, it's like here's me talking about OnlyFans and abortion. This
I don't
is
see a problem with
perfect
it.
water cooler talk.
We're having a civil conversation.
Absolutely not.
That should be great, right?
Hell yeah. I agree. I feel it's fucked up that we have to work so hard to be given rights that are definitely inherent. And even when we are given them, they are very flimsy at best, and they're easily peeled away at the whim of our government, because it's not even like that right had enough public outcry to be repealed. Most of us were behind it, but our politicians decided it's like, well, you may want it, but we don't, so we're just going to move forward this and not really care about
Absolutely
what you have to say about it.
I think that's why the First Amendment is the First Amendment. It is the public outcry. It is the free association, and the press. Also, your choice of any kind of faith. All of those things are fundamental to people, I think, and their vocalization of ideas. And it is only through the free flow of those ideas being vocalized and put out for people to sift through, find what they find valuable. That's the only way we can kind of have this idea of a better future. So, most people are progressives. They feel like we're moving towards a better future. I think that's because most people are hopeful, and it's through those free flow of ideas, and like I said, finding what's valuable, and then finding something, okay, that's not valuable, so let's not go with that. All those ideas have to be able to be communicated, and once you start restricting where those ideas are coming from, as we saw during the past couple years with, we'll say, the medical industry, I'm not using any buzzwords here. When you start limiting where ideas are, when you start limiting where ideas are coming from, or even to the point where it's nearly only one source where ideas are coming from, well, how can you say if your idea is good or not?
Yeah, without peer review and stifling other areas of speech on something, then you're creating a vacuum of thought where whoever's already there and on your side, it's just gonna get reverberated back to you. So I agree, there definitely shouldn't be a restriction on discourse as long as it's in good faith and
Right.
yeah.
I think most discourse.
Sorry, I put the there, and it was
No.
fucked. I was like, that was the end of the sentence. Oops.
No, I think most discourse is in good faith. I think most conversations are in good faith between normal people, normal everyday people. I don't have very much faith in the mainstream media today. It all seems like it's following some kind of agenda. But I also know that the ownership of most of our mainstream media is actually in one set of hands. So there you go.
Right. And it's a huge problem because we have privatized media, and we have to call it media because we can't call it the fucking news anymore.
Right.
It's not where they're telling us what's going on. It's this company backs me and I have to say this. Like, you know, the emails that were leaked and texts from Tucker Carlson,
Mm-hmm.
where he was feeding this story of, you know, these ballot boxes were rigged, but then his texts say, "Are you seeing this shit? This is absolutely ludicrous." So we see that dichotomy of what the company needs me to say and what's actually needed to be said. But the alternative would be state-run media, which again, we have a government full of lobbyists, so
Mm-hmm.
the corporations are still going to be dictating your information. So we have very little outlet for actual information that we can trust.
Yeah. I was happy to see that Tucker Carlson left and started his own thing, and it's been very successful so far.
I am not his biggest fan, just because of the lack of integrity that he showed while working for Fox, knowingly, because this is just one instance of this was false and he reported it anyway, but he's had a very long career. So where exactly does that put him in regards to being trustworthy? So the same with like Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones and shit. Like, not their biggest fan, but more power to them to say whatever the hell they want, because again, free speech is hard and fast as the basis of our liberty, but
yeah,
I just don't particularly approve of them.
I heard an interview of his, and he talked about that briefly. And it's like, do you choose to change your whole lifestyle and your family's lifestyle because you aren't gonna, wag the dog, so to speak? Uh,
Right.
and I guess I can't blame him, but I'm glad that he speaks out about it now, openly. I don't know that I don't know.
That is good that that he's owning it, and that he's not trying to sweep it under the rug like, oh, it was nothing. Like, seeing him take it pretty seriously, like, yeah, I fucking lied to a lot of people. That was good to see.
Yeah, I think that's why also we're able to do things like we're doing right now. The First Amendment, it's they weren't the Bill of Rights was not intended to be a we're giving these rights to the people. It was meant to be the government cannot touch these things under no circumstances. And so realistically, any law that would try to limit people's freedom of speech, limit the free press, immediately unconstitutional. That's what that was supposed to mean. And so even us doing like what we're doing right now and putting this out into the universe for whoever wants to listen to it is protected by that from the government, protected from the government by that. And that's the idea behind it. And I think as long as people can respect those things, that free flow of ideas, or even being able to call out Corporation A for blatantly lying to people en masse, it gives you protection and fight against things like that. And I find it sad that they.
That's very dependent. We have a lot of companies where we can call them out for blatantly lying to us, and there is trouble that they can get into. But there are definitely companies out there where it doesn't matter that they lied to you; nobody's going to do anything about it. Like DuPont, Monsanto, shit like that. Nobody's going to call out DuPont for the amount of cancer that they're causing with Teflon. Nobody's going to talk about it because they're too big. Monsanto fucking poisons people. We all know it. They know it. But at the end of the day, they run our pharmacy. So what are we going to do?
They use their dollar influence.
which
Um,
I feel like they lobbyists definitely hide behind the First Amendment as their right to represent corporations' interests in government. As soon as they were like, well, corporations are like people, I feel like it should be unconstitutional for lobbyists to try to sway government when you're literally representing one person or a select few people, but you're giving yourself more of a platform with your money that my voice does not count the same as the tobacco industry.
that's actually a good point you bring up right there. I was actually in the IRS code, and then of course to a limited degree behind that, Citizens United. Those cases are established the idea that corporations are people in and of themselves, and I think that was a huge downfall. That's one of those like nails in the coffin, as far as I can tell. Uh, you can't treat a corporation as a person because a person can go to jail. A person can take direct responsibility for what they've done. If you're going to treat a corporation as a person, well, who sits in the defendant's seat? The corporation doesn't.
I mean, it could if we are treating a corporation like a person. That's a very abstract idea. So the punishment could also be an abstract idea. You fucked up. You did something criminal. Your corporation is now frozen. You're no longer allowed to do trade. There is no commerce. Your shit's at a standstill until you pay the price. Just like if I go to jail, I ain't doing shit. I'm not going to work until I get released.
Right.
So that would possibly leverage more responsibility because of all of the employees, the shareholders, the board of directors themselves. They would then know, like, if we fuck this up, like this fragile house of cards that we've made can just come down.
Well, I think the difference being before a corporation was treated as a person, the owner or whoever was bears ultimate responsibility, and they're the ones sitting in the seat. And that's a lot more of an impact, I think, than having, oh, we're the lawyers that are here to represent Monsanto, right? Uh, no, it wasn't just the
Right.
lawyers. The owner or CEO themselves had to come, because it wasn't we're going to treat the corporation as a person. It was who's responsible, what individual is facing jail time.
Right. And, now we have such convoluted business models that no longer is the CEO,
Right.
the
Yeah.
one who's going to be in the hot seat. It's like, oh, well, my underlings intern was kind of the one responsible for this, but they're an intern, so you can't really fuck with them. So we're just going to skate.
Jesus.
So you're right. It's a shift from responsibility from someone who runs a company or started a company, that they can now pass the buck and avoid the responsibility that they have to us, the consumer.
Yeah. I think it definitely creates less of a problem of who's going to bear the responsibility and potential criminal liability to how much money is this going to cost me.
Right.
And
There's a perfect scene in Fight Club. Best book I've ever read, best movie I've ever watched, where he's explaining as an insurance adjuster, he'll go to these accidents and unknowingly faulty car part. It's like, if the average out of court settlement costs less than a recall, we're not going to do one.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is like, how much is this going to cost me?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And it is sad.
Oh, I suppose we went down a whole rabbit hole with that one, didn't we?
We did.
It was good though. It's good. No complaints there. Just realized we were way.
No. Honest to God, with our difference in political opinion, you being more moderate libertarian and me very far left, I did not expect to agree with you so much.
Well,
I was ready to fight, and I'm just like, oh, god damn it,
no,
he's
we don't
making
have
great
to fight.
points.
There's no need to fight. I look at it like this, and let me choose my words carefully.
You've got this.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with conservatives, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with liberal. Because all conservative means is that you value what has worked already, while liberal means you value new ideas. That's the true delineating line. Both of them are good when they are properly working together. Because if you toss out the baby with the bathwater for a new idea, well, that's bad, right? If you can't take new ideas in,
Yeah, you shouldn't.
right? So, but if you can't take
I'm sorry for throwing babies out. I'm dying for a second. Throwing the baby out of the window, just like, fuck.
Let's do something
Get another
new.
one.
Rah! You know. But at the same time, if you cannot move your thought forward and change your method of thinking for something that's truly better, that's bad also. Then you're just stagnating. So you kind of need both, and you kind of got to figure out like where you actually stand, and then figure out how to accommodate that so that you're not either constantly failing due to not being able to work an idea through to the end, but also that you're not stagnating because you're a refusal to view a new idea as having potential merit. So that's where I stand. I'm obvious.
I
myself.
definitely agree.
No, go ahead.
My dad had a really good phrase, isms are the death of free thought. And I wholeheartedly agree, because we see this in Congress all the time. You know, conservatives are like, oh, well, you know, we're just going to do this and fuck you. And the same on the Democratic side. They're the same, you know, the same bear in the different fucking coat. And neither one are willing to budge. So there isn't the ability for new ideas. And, you know, the other side is going to obviously discredit what has worked just because. So
Right.
it's ridiculous.
It is. It's an absolute shit show up there right now, and it's sad. It's truly sad because all it's going to do is create this horrible, you know, situation for everybody that's having to live in the mess that's being made. Because let's face it, I doubt many of them are actually impacted in any way by what they're actually doing.
And that's the problem when you have a governmental model that is shaped after, you know, Roman Parliament and Senate, but then instead of, you know, keeping your politicians at the same level as the people, we've now removed the politicians from the class, and they're no longer impacted by the things that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's at the end of the day, yeah, you're absolutely right there. It used to be more of like the scholar athlete idea. You were doing what you did day by day, you know, right there with the people that elected you, and your work as a politician was second to that. Just like, you know, the scholar athlete. Yes, they are an athlete, but they're also the scholar. We just like how, you know, that's been kind of removed from universities, not completely removed, but they've definitely made it easier to not be that. Let's just say that politicians no longer have to be there in the weeds with the people that they are supposed to be representing.
Right. And it pisses me off, frankly. I just, you see people like Clarence Thomas sitting there with like millions and millions of dollars of influential money. One, from a known fucking Nazi memorabilia and like racism collector. And you're sitting there like, Clarence Thomas, at what point did you look at your community and said, fuck them. Like for some vacations.
Yeah.
But we see that more and more with different politicians and elected officials, where it's just like, you're really a piece of shit, and you're allowed to be.
Yeah. I liked your comment. Isms are the death of free thought, because I've been saying a lot to many people, the ideologies are the death of critical thinking. It's almost like you suspend your ability to critically interpret something or analyze something because the ideology just tells you, well, this is that, and that's it. Uh, Even with the whole idea of this push that they have for instance, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I have no problem with those ideas as they are. Um, I have problems with how all these places are trying to implement and force an idea upon multitudes of a diverse population. There's no one size fits all for that. It should be an idea, yes. I think that those kinds of ideas are important for our social construct. Uh, everything that we have as a social construct is to create a little bit more of an equitable and fair world. Because at the end of the day, it's kill or be killed. You eat to survive. That's it. Which is kind of a bleak way of looking at the world. Thusly, we have these social constructs to try and make it much more palatable for average everyday person. And that's a good thing. I think we've came a long way with that. So we need to be conscious of those ideas. But at the same time, to try and government mandate one size fits all, square peg into a circle hole, that's not how it's going to go very well. You're going to piss off way more people than you are going to make happy.
That is true. But we also, I am coming from a place of I would love if the world were a little more fucking equitable for me.
Oh yeah, no. Like I said, I agree. I wish that
it's hard for me to get a job.
That's. I unfortunately feel like that is one area that we as a society have not chosen to really look at. Not enough people are actually looking at that with the means to do anything. I feel like, especially even as the world gets more and more complex, the amount of people that are going to be in similar types of situations are going to become more and more. How do you address that? It's a really uncomfortable question. No one's asking that question. No one's even trying to address it in any kind of way that beyond they're saying we should have a universal basic income. I like that idea, but at the same time, I recognize that that's what they did with other means, and it didn't turn out that well. They should revisit that and look at that before they decide on that. But it is a drastic problem that needs to be addressed by people that have means of actually doing something about it, not just a thought process problem.
Right. Unfortunately, these get turned into hot button issues where we're polarized and nobody wants to look at it as a human problem because it just becomes an ideological issue.
Exactly.
Like
and then critical thinking
we
gets
zoom
shut
out
off.
enough that we ignore the yeah, it's just like fuck it. It is tough.
I think one of my one of the biggest ideas I saw for addressing that kind of problem that I can think of off the top of my head is it would be a temporary solution, but it would just be a band-aid that would then turn into a problem. And I think that's what some politicians have tried to do in the past, and yeah, it would work in the short term, but it's not a long term solution, which would be, of course, trying to promote more business growth here, continental United States, and cutting off or curbing or prohibiting importation of goods. Yeah, you would have a momentary rise in domestic workforce, well-paying jobs, and things like that. So that would be it would be a immediate kind of boost for workforce here in the U.S. But what you would end up having in the long term is probably a lack of diversity in goods available, and you would end up creating a black market for imported goods. But
That tracks, and has been exemplified by prohibition
yeah,
and the illegality of marijuana. It's like we just made a new market ourselves. You didn't want me to have it, but I wanted it, so I went and
yeah,
got
right. We won the war on drugs. If sure, okay.
All right, so can you tell me why the CIA is funneling a lot of money into cocaine cartels?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to talk about that. Look at this weed dealer, fucking pothead.
I what are you what are your thoughts on the whole the United States is a Christian nation, and the fact that it's very plainly stated there shall be no establishment of religion.
Unfortunately, my thought and feeling is directly against the First Amendment because if you want to set this country up as a Christian nation, I kind of want to string you up. Like,
I know you have
I
different. I know we have
I love
drastically
that.
different backgrounds.
Um, I took the criminal background feed of character creation. Oops. But I love that people are able to practice Christianity, talk about their faith and values, but I will be good goddamned if I'm ever going to be governed by it. Like, I had an Uber driver that she picked me up, and I'm kind of obviously trans and shit, and she told me that my existence was in violation of her faith. I'm just sitting there like, yeah, that's fine, but also fuck you. Luckily, that's not my faith. So the fact that people want to set up a national model for that, for something that, one, Christianity isn't even the most popular religion in the world. It's Islam. Like, that is the #1 religion across the globe.
They did win the religion game. Let's just be honest.
That religion, yeah.
Well,
That's
I don't
true.
know. If you look at all the different,
But
subsets of it,
your religion is so exclusion. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. I know there's a bit of a lag with the space
Christianity,
game.
right. Christianity is exclusionary by nature. There is a lot in the Bible that is completely and utterly fucked. Like, not just the fact that, homosexuality being sin, because that's, my primary focus is the LGBT community. But, there's other things in there. Like, if a man rapes a woman, you should sell the woman to her rapist because she is now impure. That's in the Bible. So, now if we're setting up a national model based on a book that can be viewed as profoundly flawed, then it's going to have profoundly flawed effects on the people.
Well, I would say the fact that they enshrined it within the very First Amendment, just as the free flow of ideas, is drastically important for the proper functioning, that there would be no state religion means to me that, sure, the president can be a Christian, and let's say, 70% of Congress, if that's how they want it, or that's how they end up being, but that the laws should not be religiously influenced. They should not be based upon religion. They should be equitable for all. And I believe that was the intention. We're not established. If you look at where it came from, a lot of Europe, how it was under a church state mix there for a long time, and thusly they were, of course, very other types of worship were not allowed even in a lot of the countries besides what the state religion was. And for those reasons, I believe that's why that's set there in the First Amendment, is that the state is not a religious authority and not a rulemaking authority based on religion.
Wholeheartedly agree, and I find it deplorable that we have politicians and lawmakers that are citing the Bible as precedent instead of citing our legal cases and our actual legal framework as precedent. So I just think it's absolutely abhorrent that we've gotten to the point where, you can sit on the pulpit and be like, well, Jesus said. No, I don't care what Jesus said. What about, a fucking judge, that saw the case that relates to it? Maybe that. We could start with that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I see a lot of people asking questions, or I've seen the question posed many times where people are saying, how can you, if you have no religion, have any kind of moral character? And I find that to be the most ridiculous and redundant question that anybody could ever ask. Are you only moral because of religion? I'll pose the, I'll that it begs the question then, is this individual that posed that question to me only capable of morality because of his religion? If you look at the psychology of it, it is empathy that gives us morality. Even as a child, you begin, every 2-year-old, every 2-year-old's angry as hell. They're angry as hell because they're not getting what they want. And as they start exercising their levels of empathy and seeing, oh, that sucked for that person, I don't want that for myself now. That's how you build morality. It's a function of empathy. So then that begs the question, are all these religious individuals that feel a need to lean on religion to have morality,
Right,
do they just lack any form of empathy? Sorry, I'm going to rant on that one. I was raised, Southern.
Exactly.
I had, I was grew up in the
I'm
church.
I'm right there with you.
But I don't think it's necessary for morality. I think it's a tradition and a
I
conservative
don't think so
tradition.
either. I spent
I'm sorry, go ahead.
that damn lag.
Right.
I spent a lot of my time with no faith, but I've led a semi moral life for the most part. If I hurt someone, it inherently affects me. I don't want to see people hurt. And it's not because Sky Daddy's going to whoop my ass or because the legal system's going to punish me. I just don't want people to get hurt. So when people do, have to lean on faith as a basis to be a good person, it's like, okay, so you're a bad person. You just don't want to get in trouble. But on the other hand, I do see that, humanity has their base nature, which can be can be viewed as, you know, we're only as good as we have to be sometimes. You know, if some things were not illegal, I feel wholeheartedly that, you know, they would be done more.
Yeah. I I think one of the I can't claim to know, but I do believe that by saying that there could be no state religion and also then allowing any religion, you had people that were, Christian, Catholic, I'm sorry, let's use the proper terms for the back in time. There were Catholics, there were Protestant Christians, then there were Muslims, there were Jewish. We even had, you know, religions from Southeast Asia over here at the time, and allowing for that melting pot, in my opinion, of ideas. That's how I view them. They're all ideas. That to me allows for a greater diversity of ideas and ways of looking at things. I look at, I can't help but look at religion, in my opinion, as trying to be better human beings. And that was, I believe, the pursuit that was to be had. And some of them that fell off the rails at some point, let's just be honest. But I believe it was all about trying to be better human beings, for ourselves and for each other and for the future. So in that regard, I love studying it. I think it's a worthy pursuit. There's probably golden gems and diamonds of ideas in there that should be given thought. Uh, but I feel like if you're just reading it literally, you're missing the point.
Absolutely. You know, I look at most religious texts as allegorical
Mhm.
at best. But there are those golden principles within those that you can apply to everyday life, and it's a good message. But if you're taking it at face value and you're trying to apply every single word of that book to every aspect of your life, it's not going to work out.
No, but I think it's great that we have a place where all the different ideas from nearly everywhere, well, kind of like India, like they have religions that are dead in anywhere else of the world except for there, and they hold on to them, and I think it's great. Here in the U.S., also being able to have all the multitude of different things that we can have here in the U.S. Uh, take advantage of it. Study something different. You know, uh, I think that I don't know if that was the intent, but the fact that it's, you know, allowed to happen and has continued to happen, I think it's kind of sad that it's not looked at as it is. It's a wonderful opportunity to have things that you might not see uh, in some countries, except for here, where you can have like a Muslim temple and then possibly have a Catholic cathedral, have a Southern Baptist church right next to that one, and then have also a Buddhist temple next to that. They could be all on the same fucking block, and that's kind of fucking amazing, in my opinion.
It really is.
It's
And it's something you don't see in a lot of places. Actually, that's not entirely true.
there's some places.
You know, we have this idea in America that we are the freest place in the world. But you know, we don't have right, we don't have a monopoly on democracy.
No, we
You
don't.
know, Belgium, Spain, France, England, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, all of these places have. It's cool to see that we have that in this country, but it's also not to be looked at as a bastion when there are other places that are doing it much better than we can hope to right now.
You're right. There's definitely some countries, that do some things
I
better
just
than we
replied to
do.
the wrong fucking chat.
Oh no, you're good. I think that there's definitely some countries that do some things better than we do, and unfortunately, I believe this country is now not remembering where it came from, which was us taking the best ideas out there and being able to see them for what they were and incorporate them and possibly make them even better. That was our push for American exceptionalism, was we're not going to be beaten in the good idea market. Unfortunately, now we think that we just shit good ideas. Well, no, we don't shit good ideas. Uh, and just because the idea didn't come from us doesn't make it bad. Uh, I think that's where we've lost touch with that American exceptionalism, or American exceptionalism, because we're not willing to look outside of ourselves and say, "Hey, that's a damn good idea. How can we make it even better?"
Right. It's just become what the fuck's the word for it? God damn it. It's right there.
It's conceited, kind of.
It's nationalism. That's the one. We've gone from exceptionalism to nationalist thought where, there can be no other way than ours. And if there's a foreign idea, we're just going to shut it down.
Yeah. That being said, I see other countries like Canada, for instance, our most recent, our closest neighbor, Canada, and even the UK, forgetting basic principles and going with ideology, uh, and going down that road just as hard as we are going with nationalism. Uh, it's sad because at the end of the day, nationalism is just an ideology, also.
Absolutely. You see that especially in the UK, right?
Yeah.
This fucking lag. It's gonna kill me. But you see a lot of push for, we have Nazi demonstrations in Australia where I get the right to assemble, the right of free speech, and that's fine. But we're seeing an outpouring of support for this. And last I checked, most of us, remember an entire world at war because of these assholes, and now we're just watching them in the streets, and it's like, no, this is all right. So that's becoming a prevalent issue in the UK and Australia and other places abroad, as well as here at home.
I feel like if we were not in a state right now where there's a decline, I feel like that's what's happening globally right now, is we're in a state where things have stagnated. People are demanding new ideas because things are stagnating. The progressive agenda has been failing, so to speak, right? Failing to provide the results that they've been promising, which is, it's going to happen. If we look at history, we can see that every empire has either evolved or died. It's one or the other. I think right now we're in one of those states of things. So you're going to end up having people in two camps, just how people's thinking tends to go into two different camps, either more conservative or more liberal. That's why I believe we're seeing a rise in these things, and it's being allowed because, well, by the vast majority of our nation's laws, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly is there as a thing. So they may feel that their hands are tied in a way as far as the government addressing these things. But on the other hand, instead of being laughed off the stage, which such things as Nazism and those things should have been laughed off the stage by the vast majority of people, these individuals that are extremely dissatisfied with the state of things as they are trying to turn to an ideology.
Right. And it's the age old issue with hate groups, and especially with white supremacy, is the average Joe may not agree with all of the tenets of that ideology, but they feel isolated. They feel alone. And this group has enough in common with them that they get into it, and then they create one of those vacuums where everything's just an echo chamber. And the next thing you know, Joe Schmo neighbor is now giving you the good old Sieg Heil. And it's like, how did we get here? It's because we only have those two camps. And you're going to fall in with one of them.
Yeah. You're going to fall in with the one you identify the most with.
I need some water.
Well, to me, it's just like the whole, resurgence of racism. And I have so many headaches over that, the resurgence of racism. Again, another ideology that's going to cease people's ability to critically think about things. Everyone in the world, I don't care who you are, what culture you came from, what ethnicity you came from, every human being on the planet has a in-group bias. And it's mostly visual. It's mostly visual. And we cannot overcome that. That's an instinctive thing that's just pre-wired into our brains. So every person, unfortunately, to some degree, is racist. It's fundamental to the human experience. And you either just come to terms with that and get over it.
I would go as far as to say biased.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, absolutely. That is, you are 100% correct. You're right. It doesn't meet the definition of racism.
Because racism just limits it to, right. Because it could just be like, some people are biased against people with tattoos and piercings. You know me, I'm covered head to toe. I've got my nose pierced, my ears gauged, but there are going to be those people who see me and they're like, this must be a lesser than person because of, you're right, visuals. It's just the optics that you agree or disagree with.
Yeah. And there's a fundamental in-group bias to it looks like me. And it's hard to overcome that. It's very hard to overcome that. But you overcome that by experience and getting out and experiencing new things. So then your in-group bias shrinks. You become more diverse in your ability of how you see the world. But the thing is, there's nothing. We just have to accept that as a thing, come to terms with it and understand it. And then the world goes on and everyone's okay. Because I don't care who you are, you could be at a party of people that are ethnically different than you, and no one cares because you're all there. You're all friends. Maybe it's a work friend that you were invited to their party. No one cares because they value you more as a friend. So you can overcome that and get over that. And no one cares at the fact that you probably have some stereotypical assumptions because of in-group bias. And it's okay. It's a human condition. It's okay.
That is one thing I'll always be happy about is, I grew up in counterculture. I started listening to punk and metal and going to those shows when I was like 12 or 13. So I fell into a group that by definition was aesthetically different, no matter if it was, race, gender, whatever. Everyone was very different. So we overloaded the optics and the visuals. So we had to start taking people as they are and, as we perceive them instead of just, the surface level understanding.
Yeah. I mean, imagine me. I went to San Diego after joining the military, coming from Southern Alabama. That was culture shock, man.
Whoops. This ain't Mobile anymore, Dorothy.
No, it's not. So, I mean, I had a lot of assumptions just with how I grew up, but I will say that is probably the frying pan. Any kind of military boot camp. You walk out of military boot camp, it doesn't matter. You're in the military now, and that's your in group, right? That's where your in group bias is.
Yeah, the armor. What do they say? The armed forces is just green.
Yeah, that's your in group bias now. They're military or they're not.
Right? You fucking civvy. You
Yep.
god
Nasty
damn
civvies.
dependa.
But I mean, coming out of that,
Rat
though,
bastards with their unkempt hair.
look at me all dirty with a beard now. But
Your mustache goes beyond the corners of your mouth. What have you done?
but that was after that. I mean, coming out of the military, I mean, I'm sure it was. It was probably different for you, but for me, it was like I don't know. My in group bias now is still very much so military or not, and I have a bias against lack of discipline. That's probably my primary thing.
I can actually get behind that. There is, did I particularly like my time in the military? No. I joined when I was 17. I was adrift. I had no fucking purpose. But it did give me an appreciation for self-discipline, for people that I can see, are trying to do something more.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see people who are just like, insanely lazy or completely averse to thinking and shit. And it's just like you really don't have any give a fucks about who you are as a person.
But shit, we went down a deep rabbit hole again. Jesus.
That's what they're for.
Yeah.
I love the rabbit hole because the ideas that we're talking about are pretty easy to digest, but they tendril out into
all kinds of things.
A lot of different aspects of our life, our culture. Yeah, for sure.
I actually I'll kind of jump on one of those things and then try to bring it back. As much as the military has that bringing a lot of different people together and getting them on the same page as being able to work together, the diversity of idea that's shared amongst that group, because you no longer have that cultural bias necessarily preventing you from even being able to accept certain things. There's so much diverse thought out there amongst all those individuals, and then you're able to experience all that because you're more open to it. And I think that's kind of a magical thing.
It is. I'll agree with that to a point. But the military's goal, through basic training, AIT, and all of your initial schooling, is to break you down and then reconstruct you in the image that they need you to. Both of us served in the time of don't ask, don't tell. So, there was that culture of, slurs against gay people were not, we didn't give it a second thought. I did because, I'm gay as fuck. But, had to fall in line and you got to laugh along. Otherwise, you get a little bit suspect. So, they're able to squash the issues of being afraid of diversity, but to a point, because you still have to fall in line with, the doctrine that they're adhering to.
No, you're right. You have a point there. You're right. I I think it was becoming more of a lack of issue, especially for us over on the Marine Corps side. Uh, we didn't really care, or I should say, the majority of us didn't really care. Uh, I know there was a lesbian sergeant that I worked with, and she was great. I was sad to see her go, but she left for that very reason. Uh, she couldn't have a functional relationship really, and that was because of the rules that were at that time. Uh, and that kind of pissed me off actually, because she was a damn good sergeant.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And that's it's so fucked up that that happened to so many people for so long.
yeah,
Because like that's nothing new.
no,
Um, I was just in an argument with my cousin, um, because it is Pride Month, and again, I am a rainbow bitch to the core. But my cousin posted something like, "It's Pride Month, so I'm gonna post the flag I'm proud of," and it was the American flag. I'm like, well,
okay,
you're a month too late. Armed Service Appreciation Month is actually in May. So if you wanted to be proud of that, you should have been here like last month. But I wanted to turn it around and be like, imagine if you want to back the military so much, go look at photos of homosexual men in the military. It's a beautiful thing that we were unable to appreciate because of the difference. And like there is a long history of LGBT people in the military that our rights and freedoms were discouraged, illegalized, because the UCMJ could penalize us if they found out what we were doing. Like, if the Army found out I was taking estrogen and going on HRT back in 2007, I would have been effing crucified.
yeah. I do have to say, I want to know when they're going to start sloth, greed, wrath, and gluttony month. I had to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I had to.
That's that's every that's a funny joke. It's a good one. I get
Okay,
it.
okay. That's my one. That's my one.
Everybody gets one.
Okay.
And I wish there was another word for it. And I guess like pride just kind of sums it up, but it's more a celebration of, marriage equality, the things that we've had to do and endure to get to the point we are today. And we're still not afforded the exact same freedoms as everyone else. So, I wish it wasn't, pride, because you're right, that is the term for one of the deadly sins. But
we were just talking
because
about
we're able to finally
religion
be
and
proud
stuff.
of who
I
we
had
are
to.
and not. We had to. Yeah, it had to.
I couldn't contain
we
it
were doomed
anymore.
to
I'm
be
sorry.
Happy Pride Month. I have now betrayed the entire community.
Happy Pride Month.
Feel free to revoke my gay card.
Oh man. All right. But no, I'm glad the military. And this is another one of those things where it bothers me, because it's almost like you get seized by these ideologies, and you end the capacity to critically think or analyze things. So let's face it. Yes, don't ask, don't tell. That was a horrible policy, and to a certain degree, I feel like it was some kind of compromise, between the conservative individuals and the liberal individuals. They made some kind of compromise, uh, but the fact that it was still punishable as a crime under the UCMJ, it's that leaves a lot to be desired, and that was very lacking. So people felt as though they literally could not, even in secret, be themselves, and that's kind of sad. And ended up in a very, very unfortunate and heartbreaking for, I imagine, many individuals situation. Now, to a certain degree, I understand where the military was coming from, but at the same time, it was false. We were in the we were in the 2000s. No one gave a shit. I just want to know that the person next to me is able to do their goddamn
Exactly.
job.
And that's right. And I think, you know, when they looked at that and made that compromise, they weren't just like, you know, leaning on religion for ethics just because a gay man is in the showers, you know, with other men does not inherently mean that they are one
No,
sexualizing these other men or
no,
two going to do anything about it.
no
You
one
know,
cared.
it's insane to think that, right? It's like we
We
weren't
all showered
fucking
together
sword fighting in
naked
the goddamn
anyway. Come
shower.
on.
Right. It's like, first of all, like, y'all motherfuckers smell. Like, we're not even going to get into that, firstly.
I mean, at the end of the day, if any problems arose
In the shower, in the military, is not a place for sexy.
You know, let's just be honest. If someone actually didn't have the self-control or self-discipline to keep their shit together and created a very unfortunate and awkward situation, we just would have beat the shit out of the person and they would have fixed their behavior. That's probably how it would have happened.
I'll bring it back to the lifestyle or swingers club that I go to. Super inclusive, and as a trans woman, I'm able to use the women's facilities. I am in an overtly sexual place with scantily or not clad women. And, you know, we all have the wherewithal not to do anything or not to keep your shit together amongst other people. Then you didn't have your shit together to begin with, and that just means you're a bad person. Exactly.
I know that with the mainstream media entertainment industry, every unfortunate or heartbreaking or saddening piece of news is going to make it in there and be over dramatized to the point where it's trying to get a reaction out of people. You don't see good news anymore. There is no, hey, here's the happy events of the day where things went well.
Exactly. You know, blood sells every day of the week.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're only being showed the darkest part of humanity, and that's why we only see humanity as dark, because we're not covering, you know, we saved an entire puppy mill of dogs and got them adopted, or, you know, here's our community outreach. It's here's who got murdered. So here's what horrible thing happened in this country. And it's sad that we can't look at the good, and we have to focus on the bad.
Like, and I'll take an example from something that's probably very personal to you. Children story time at the libraries or at bookstores. I saw that start, and I saw that as it was almost like a community outreach. Look, I'm a human being too. I want to do good things. I'm going to read to children. My heart sank when I saw that, because I was like, someone's going to fuck this up. And all it took was one. All it took was one. And it's ruined for everyone now. You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Right. And you know, that's I do. And that is the weird, you know, cis heteronormative dichotomy versus what our community goes through. Twitch is a prime example, you know, of a culture of mostly you know, hetero white men who are streaming video games, and their target audience are teenagers. But we have scandal after scandal after scandal of these men texting minors, meeting up with them, doing all this shit. But, you know, there's no public outcry to ban men from Twitch. But, you know, yes, one bad apple ruined. Like, I love seeing drag queen story time. That's some Dolly Parton shit right there. Like, drag is not
Oh, by
by
the way,
its
John,
nature sexual until you go to like an adults only. Uh, Go ahead.
John's going to a drag show, by the way. I
Fuck
thought you might
yeah.
find that fun.
Fuck yeah, John's going to a drag show.
Hey, that stuff's entertaining. I gotta say, that's amazing entertainment. So,
I love that for him.
but
Oh my
but no,
god. It really is. Like I was
oh, go ahead.
fuck, where was I? I went to there was a store, but now it's more of an event thing called the Dark Parlor. It's a bunch of like medical oddities and goth type shit, but they also put on events. So they just had one called Fang Around the Cauldron, where we had like a vaudevillian gothic type drag show, and it was fucking fantastic. Like
That
shout
sounds
out to Lauren
fantastic.
Ray for putting those together.
We're at about
I love drag queens.
oh, we went over an hour. Okay. we've been busy.
Right? I'm used to streaming for like 3 hours,
Oh wow,
2 to 3 hours,
I
running games. So
I try to make sure that I'm saying the right things and saying exactly what I mean, and that can get kind of exhausting after a while. Um, I don't want anybody to try to twist what
it
I've
really
said,
can.
out there. But because
Right,
shit, enough people
right.
try
And
to.
you
Enough
know,
people try to.
I think right, and I think on both our ends, like everything has been palatable
I think so.
and inclusive and all that. So at the heart of it, those rights in the First Amendment should be protected at all costs, but it should not be abused and twisted to someone else's point of view of it. It just is we should be able to talk about what we want. We should be able to worship how we please, and I should be able to project ideas in a manner that I see fit without governmental restriction.
I think the biggest thing, to piggyback off of what you just said right there, I think the biggest thing, kind of like how I was saying, if someone got out of line in some way, especially within the military, we self-regulated that shit. And I think what needs to happen
Right.
is we take ownership of what we are considered born with in our systems, under what has evolved from English common law into our innate, or if you consider it God-given rights. I think in those situations what we need to do is take back ownership of that. We don't need the state trying to control that for us. We as the people need to demand those things and self-regulate in a way where if someone's stepping out of line and abusing it or taking advantage of it, we regulate that as well.
Exactly. And that would be a beautiful step in the right direction.
Yeah, I thought that was, I think that can go wrong too, to a certain degree, uh, but I feel like that's less wrong than giving the state power to control it, to where people are now going to jail over it. That's not what we need. What we need is a self-regulation.
Right. No, I
But
agree. But you're right. We're at the hour and a half mark, so
I've
I
had a good
doubt you want
time
to
though.
go
Thank
over
you.
that. Do you have any? Hell yeah. Do you have any idea on what your next topic's going to be?
I think it should be a current event topic. I try to do something that's like historical and meaningful as far as, uh, in that way, like amendments, Bill of Rights, judicial things, whatever's going on. And then what I want to do after that is kind of like a current events thing. So usually when I do a current events thing, whoever is coming on to shoot the shit with me or uh, bullshit with me, I want them to bring a topic.
Um,
So
if I can
Don's last
throw my
topic.
hat into the ring, his politics.
Huh?
Go ahead.
So Don's topic, we shot the shit about pedophiles last time, and the pedophile rings within the government.
I'm surprised either of you are still, walking around free and breathing.
I haven't aired it yet, so I at this point in time, I still have not aired it yet. I'm actually kind of scared to.
Oh, so we'll just fair. At least this is already streamed, so if it ever becomes suspect,
shit, you just outed me.
How Don and Blake went down.
Hey, if I died, it was not suicide.
If you want, fair. If you want next time, I would love nothing more than to discuss not his politics, but the fact that a felon can run for president.
Ooh, that's a dangerous one.
But like completely leave, his politics and all the dumb shit he says out of it, but just the nature of just anyone, like take him out of the mix, and we'll just be hypothetical Joe Schmo is a convicted felon and running for president, and the issues that lie in that.
I have to let you know, like I have no chips in this game myself. I hate both of them, so we can definitely talk about that.
Right? They're both
absolutely. I would rather see Giant Meteor voted in. I would rather see Giant Meteor voted in than either one of them. But that's me. That being said, if I had to, someone put a gun to my head. At least the
meteor will work for equality.
Yeah. That being said, if I was forced, like someone put a gun to my head and said, you're going to vote for one of these two, I would vote for the felon, but not for the reasons you might think.
I will talk to you about that because I'd love to hear your ideas, just not.
I would love to
on this.
Yeah.
On the Twitch or the podcast.
No, I'd love to talk with you because there's a lot to unpack on all of that. There's a lot to unpack there. And like I said, it would not be a choice. That's not my preferred situation. But if a gun was to my head, that would end up being my choice. But only under those circumstances. I'd vote Giant Meteor first.
Fair enough. That's a good place to stop here. I'm gonna go back to shooting people in the face in Destiny and talking a lot of shit.
Okay.
But it's always good catching up with you, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Did you have a good time?
Oh fuck yeah! I always have a good time.
Good. Then it was all worth it. Thank you.
Yep. I'll see you next time.
Later.